Oh.
Whoa.
Is there a shut off?
Yeah, I think the engine just went.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
You just hold the block, buddy.
Oh, shit.
You ain't driving it home.
Good thing I got the trailer today. Sorry about that.
Hey, at least you pulled over and got off to the side, man. I
I'm
appreciate
really
that.
sorry about that.
Hey, shit happens, dog. I was worried that saw a fire or something going on.
Yeah, I thought it was the trans, but...
Yeah, if you want to hop out, you go ahead and hop out, buddy. You want to pop the hood, too? Yeah, he windowed the fucking block.
Oh, yeah.
Came out of this thing. That was.
Alrighty, so here's the aftermath. It's the day after. Took me about 2.5 hours to get out. And basically there's a few pieces of piston laying down there, which is interesting. And then if we walk over here, we can see there's quite a significant amount of windowage. So we're gonna go ahead and pop this motor mount off and then take a gander. Alright, so I popped that mount off. You can see there's a lot of debris there. And then there's quite a catastrophe down there. So that's interesting. Alright, we're gonna get her torn down. I loosened up a lot of the gaskets already, so it should take a little less time. Oh boy. Got some valves that stayed. Hopefully the cam didn't get hit by the parts flying. Well, a bunch of these intake valves are really bent, so not looking good for these heads. So at first glance, it looks like maybe the piston broke first, but have to look at the rest of it. All right, so we got some live action here. Some broken piston, bunch of bent valves. Not too sure yet why exactly that many valves are bent, but hopefully it's not because my camshaft broke, because that would not be good. It looks like the valves hit on every piston, which is strange. Holy moly. It's pretty interesting that these rods can actually bend that much. All right, so here's a final rundown on this engine and why I think it failed. Basically, starting from the beginning of before the pass, I pulled up to the lanes after my first 10-second pass in a car, which was really awesome. And I decided I was going to run it again. And this time, all that I changed was the two-step. I set a little higher at 5,000 so I could leave on the two-step. And I tested the two-step in the staging lanes once, and then I did it again before the burnout, and then I used the two-step to go into the burnout. And it is worth noting that before the burnout, I did note that the temps were rising, and the reason I noticed that was I heard the engine bog down a little bit because the fans kicked into high, and basically I looked at the temps and it was at about 205, which is not terrible, but the reasoning behind why it was at 205 is because the intercooler is actually pretty restrictive as far as airflow goes, and it's kind of wedged in there. So that's the first time I've really, done all that crazy stuff and then parked it basically at a dead stop and then idled it for another 10 minutes. And in my opinion, if that temperature wasn't high like that, this probably wouldn't have happened. Now, getting to what actually broke, basically on my setup, the turbo manifolds are aiming towards the front. So in my opinion, these cylinders are going to see the highest pressure. And the middle cylinders obviously see the most boost from the intake. I know it's barely a difference, but basically these two cylinders failed, which in my opinion are the highest back pressure and the highest boost. Well, these get high boost too, but not as much back pressure. And the pistons broke. Now, these two cylinders, 1 and 5, did get really hot. As you can see, that piston was seizing up in the cylinder. So it got really, really hot. And so did this one. This is number 1. That broke because of something flying around in the crankcase. Now we get to these. This one, I'm not too sure about, because this could have broken from hitting the head, or it could have broken from a ring. I'm not too sure. My guess is that it actually broke on the bottom and shattered first, but I could be wrong. It is worth noting that that ring is pretty wedged in there. So it had to be decently hot, but looking at some of the chunks in the oil pan there, none of the pieces showed scoring like cylinders number 1 and 5. But in my opinion, I believe that the piston broke first, one of these two pistons, and that's what wiped out this motor. And moving on to the crank, you can see that the mains look perfect. There's nothing wrong there. All the main bearings look great. These are the ones that actually get loaded because they're on the direction that the crank is pushing. And the block doesn't seem cracked or anything like that. It obviously is broken to pieces now, but it didn't like crack down the middle like some people say and cause a lot of oiling problems and the mains to fail. That's not what happened. What happened is it got hot with cast pistons, and the cast pistons broke and it wiped out rods, unfortunately. It's probably worst case scenario, in my opinion, for that all to happen just from a piston breaking. Now moving on to these heads, as I said, pretty much every valve has touched a piston. You can see these two that aren't as bent did in fact hit a piston, and the reasoning behind that, in my opinion, is that basically one of these pieces of something got wedged in between one of the lobes on the cam and the block or something, and basically sheared off the dowel off of the camshaft, which is very unfortunate because I was planning on reusing those heads and just slapping them on another motor. And the reason the cam chain was tight is not because the crank is bent, it's because there's a little chunk of what appears to be piston right there. But other than that, the chain seems pretty good. it seems like it's the right tension when you roll it around past that little piece. And of course my nice Moroso pickup is destroyed, which kind of sucks. And a lot of other things got damaged. So basically everything got damaged besides maybe the roller lifters and the rocker arms. But it's a big catastrophe. But honestly, I'm really happy that I got a 10-second pass out of it, and I'm definitely not that upset. I know it kind of sucks, but I'm not gonna let it ruin my day. And basically just gonna put one of these ones together and send it again, but this time maybe I'll fix my cooling system and possibly run it on E85. I also want to give a shout out to my local track. They were extremely forgiving, and none of them were upset whatsoever. They were all nice. I felt really bad that I oiled down the track and all, but they were all super cool and basically said they want me to come back, which meant a lot to me. And it seemed like the crowd liked it, and there was a few people that had come to the pits and helped me push the car up on the trailer, which was awesome. So overall, it was a great experience, and despite it obviously costing a lot of time and money to fix, it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a miserable time. I went to the bleachers after this, after I got it loaded up, and enjoyed the rest of the night and hung out, and honestly went pretty good considering this. So thanks for watching.